what kind of problems are happening at the kindness level?
Listening is a huge one. Communication is absolutely probably one of the big things that is just constantly coming up. How are you getting listened to? Does your team feel like when there's something they're suggesting?
One small action can have a large impact. What sort of ripple effects have you seen in kindness?
Yeah, tons of ripple. That's actually one of my universal lessons is always that there's a ripple effect and you don't always know what it's going to be.
How does it show up for you, and how do you coach people on like when you need to have that a real conversation that might be uncomfortable? Kindness can play a part in that. I'm curious what you would think about that. Linda, it is a pleasure to have you on Transform Your Workplace again I think this is our third time.
I think it is. I'm so glad to be back with you, Brandon. Thank you.
For those that haven't heard Linda, we've got 2 other episodes that we've done together over the years. I think one was pre-pandemic, one in the pandemic, and here we are, like kind of the dust has settled a little bit, and now I want to catch up with you. So you are the kindness catalyst. You are all about bringing kindness to the individuals' lives and to organizations. How did you get into this work in the first place?
Thank you. Let me see. Let's take you back just a little bit. In 2006, I found out my dad was dying of lung cancer, and I did some healing with him, let's just say, in the last 8 months of his life. And after he died, I took on a personal project to do 1,000 mitzvahs in his memory. And a mitzvah in Judaism is a good deed or an act of kindness. And that project, that turned into a blog, which turned into my first book, 1,000 Mitzvahs, How Small Acts of Kindness Can Heal, Inspire, and Change Your Life. I did a TED Talk, and I started getting hired to speak about kindness personally. And in 2014, I began really looking at kindness in the workplaces and how kindness actually impacted cultures, businesses, organizations. It started to feel like the U.S. was experiencing a little more divisiveness probably back in 2014 or so. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really stepped into my work with corporations and organizations. So I've been doing that now about a decade around kindness in the workplace.
The divisiveness is still there, unfortunately. So what has this journey been like for you? Just seeing how you started out that project of 1,000 mitzvahs, you started doing work in organizations. Did you think your career was going to go there and that you'd be talking with employers about how to like create better cultures?
No, I did not. I feel totally like this career path found me. I love what I am doing now both as a keynote speaker and as a trainer and consultant for organizations. It has grown so much, and I'm excited because you and I talked really kind of in the pandemic, and even since the pandemic hit, so much of my work has shifted. So I'm excited to talk with you a little bit about what's changed for me. And I will say, I know you just kind of jokingly said we are still divisive. One of the things that shifted is there are more people doing the same kind of work that I'm doing. Good. I actually have a group of women that I discovered on LinkedIn who we are all working in the business of kindness. And we've created a little mastermind group, and we meet monthly and we support each other. We're from around the globe. We're from New Zealand and England and Australia and all over the United States. So for me, actually, it felt pretty lonely at the beginning when I sort of fell into this work. And now I feel like, yes, we may need more of it, but I feel like there are more people who are also aware of this beneficial work and are doing it.
I love the way you put that, because I think most people, especially when they're starting a business, are like, I need to be the only one of my kind. I need to have my place in the market. But yet, if you find others like you could share ideas around what you're hearing. There's probably data collection, strategies, and you could probably figure out a way to be friendly and amplify your message. So more people are wanting to talk about it. More people are wanting to hire all of you. There's enough of the pie to go around.
Totally. You've used words that are really important for my National Speakers Association. We call it building a bigger pie. There is enough work for all of us. Look, if you came on here and you said, well, the divisiveness feels so much better now, 10 years later, look, and I would say there maybe isn't enough work for all of us. But until I think we feel like we're living in a world where that's the reality, I think we will all feel like there is work to do. Yeah. So, we do share ideas and data, and we're constantly in this little group chat that we have on LinkedIn. People are sharing resources, and it's wonderful when we have those opportunities.
Not to put you on the spot or anything, but is there any research or data you've come across, or do you have anecdotal evidence of the conversations you're having, or like when you get to peek inside of an organization, what kind of problems are happening at the kindness level?
So I think staffing issues are a big piece of it. You have people who will follow a manager somewhere else to another company because it's a manager they love working for. And you will have people quit a company because the management team doesn't see them or value them or treat them with kindness. And I think these days I think team members want that. They want their leadership. And I think you're seeing a lot more transparency at the leadership level, and communication and authenticity, and maybe even more boundaries around what, especially post-COVID, kind of what is a work-life balance, if that even exists. I mean, I think a lot of people will say that doesn't necessarily really exist. But I think you will see leaders really trying to lean into that. So I think to me, there are so many words that you could use beyond kindness. And I've had to grow my own verbiage, empathy, compassion, composure, resilience, understanding. I could use a whole group of words that I think all fall under this category of what does kindness in a culture and a workplace look like?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about some of the behaviors that fall into kindness, what sort of things pop up?
Listening is a huge one. Communication is absolutely probably one of the big things that is just constantly coming up. How are you getting listened to? Does your team feel like when there's something they're suggesting, it gets listened to and maybe we make changes? So that even brings you into how somebody manages, autonomy. In my work, I'm not getting micromanaged. Those are some big pieces. And then just really, recognition is so huge from the littlest thing, specific recognition. I did something in a certain way and my manager notices and tells me the specificity about what it was that I did. I can tell you the stories that I hear from audiences, 10 years later, that employee will still remember that comment the manager gave them. It's crazy, and that may be a manager they followed to another job or two, So that definitely is piece of the kindness culture for sure.
When you're doing your work, I know you got the keynotes, I know you're doing workshops, you're talking to organizations. Are you focused more on kindness as a value and a philosophy about the way we're going to treat each other and what that means? Or are you focusing more on tactics? Or is it both of those things? You got to set the philosophy and values, and then you got to show people like what that means in terms of action?
Yeah. I think it's the later. I talk about science and data of kindness because sometimes people will be like rolling their eyes, like, why are we bringing in the kindness catalyst? I call it the elephant in the room. And now, because I've been doing this for a decade, there is stuff from Harvard Business Review, Forbes magazine, Stanford University professors, so many people. There is so much more research now about kindness than when I got into this in 2006. So I show that, I'll be talking and just slightly letting these images of these news articles. I had my assistant put this together a couple of years ago for one of my clients because I knew I was giving a keynote and it was the second or third time I had come back to them. And I knew that there were people literally with their arms crossed, about this. So I feel like being able to share that it's not just me. This is something that we are finding is making a difference for companies. So there's that piece of it, the science and data. And then absolutely, you need to have the tactical, practical pieces about what I could do. So more recently, one thing I don't know that I've started doing, and this was a client who asked me, I was doing something with their leadership. And then we came up with the idea that I was going to do some recorded videos that they were going to share with their employees. They were going to be mandatory kindness videos that their employees were going to be required to watch when they onboarded or if they were already part of the organization. They're about 10-minute videos, and these were going to be really practical tools that the team members would learn about. How can I be kind to my fellow team member? How can I be kind to our clients? And what can I expect from leadership as well? And so I created three of those. The feedback from the employees the first time I launched that was absolutely phenomenal. Without even a question, we had like 75 people. It was a 3,000 person company. 75 people sent in, messages to the headquarters. So that was really gratifying that we had hit the nail on the head about what could really be practical for the team members.
I imagine when employees are onboarded and they see that kindness videos are part of the onboarding experience, that they're like, wow, this employer really cares about the culture and is actually walking the talk. Getting there, though, seems like an uphill battle in some ways. And why I'm thinking of that is like, I think for a lot of organizations, it's like, to be introspective around there's something wrong with our culture, or there's we could do better, and to then hire somebody like you to come in and talk to the organization about what kindness means. I'm just like, how does that even happen? Like, who's hiring you for some of these things? Because for leaders, I'm sure that's hard to say, like, we're looking in the mirror and saying, we could be kinder.
I've been in audiences and there was somebody military and he said, when you look in the mirror, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. And so, he made that comment and I thought, yeah, that's really true. I think who's hiring me, credit unions who are already super kind culture. They just want to re-emphasize what the culture is that they absolutely want. Senior living communities who maybe are struggling with staffing issues, because their culture is so intense. A lot of the frontline workers, so much to do. And maybe they're seeing that people aren't necessarily as good at making eye contact. They aren't as good at giving each other grace, just so that there are things bubbling up in their organization. Healthcare is hiring me. Government is hiring me. So I think when you have a leader who says, we could always get a little better at this. And I think right now, any leader should be willing to say that. Because I'm sure, even with where we are and we're saying we're more divisive right now in the United States, you have people coming to work who are possibly part of that little microcosm. And actually, that's one of the things I love about senior living, to be honest. One of my favorite things is they are a microcosm of the world. Because if you think about who's working there, multi-generations live in the same property with people who are working in their homes. We call it you're working in their homes. You have people coming from all different countries who are working in the various departments. So you really have a microcosm of human beings from around the globe at all ages. So I feel like if they can do it right in their little microcosm, it's a role model for the bigger world. And because they touch community members, families and, vendors and stuff, that's one of the things I sort of want to empower them. So that's the message I show up with, Wiz, is you have an opportunity, if you feel empowered, to lean into a culture of kindness, to now be able to do that and show other people what's possible.
Absolutely. I've always felt like with kindness, one small action can have a large impact, and you might have no idea. Like, I feel like there is a ripple effect to this in this work that you've seen, because you're probably collecting data, you're talking to people. What sort of ripple effects have you seen in kindness?
Yeah, tons of ripple. That's actually one of my universal lessons, is always that there's a ripple effect and you don't always know what it's going to be. But trust me, there is one. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is, many years ago, I was speaking for a retail organization. It was coming up on the holiday season. And it was a young gal in her 20s who was working I think it was one of her first jobs. And her manager knew she was living out of state from her family and she was feeling really sad with the holidays coming up. And so he called her into his office and he said, I want you to go home. And he gave her a ticket to fly home, which I think it was up here in Oregon. Wow. And she was down in California. So we heard this story in one of my groups when she shared, can you share a time you received a kindness in your workplace? And so she shared this story, and it was 15 years later. So the ripple effect that's what I'm saying, is there can be a memory of something that lasts a long time. Now you could have the story where somebody shares something on social media. It could be stopping by the side of the road when my car broke down, and I don't know who the person was. And so I want to put it up and I share it on social media, and somehow then we find the person who it was. And then it impacts all the people who got to read about it or see it. So there's things that are very small. I tell a story about letting a guy go in front of me, an older gentleman at a grocery store. And that little act of kindness, which, I had my groceries for our family of 4. So of course the basket was full and he just had 2 items. So anybody would do that.
Yeah.
But he thanked me and he said to the cashier, did you see what she just did?
That's
awesome. The nicest thing. That's the nicest thing that happened to me today. And I'm thinking, like, what kind of a day was he having if that was the nicest thing that happened to him? So I think we can't underestimate the power. And I tell people right now, especially post-COVID, when we bump into someone, we don't know what they're struggling with, but a lot of people are really, really struggling right now. A lot of people are having, so many situations that you may not see in their face, but that act of kindness is really going to make a difference for them.
My colleague, Angela, who I've been a side-by-side partner with for 15 years at Xenium, she always says, like, what's in your backpack? It's like, you don't know what somebody is carrying in the backpack. It could be really heavy or it could be really light. But I think if we lead with kindness, and the acts of kindness throughout the day that might lighten their load just a little bit more, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% it will lighten their load because we're meant to live this life together, and some burdens that you share could be shared with someone else. It makes the burden lighter when you celebrate with somebody the same thing. You want to celebrate the joy. But you just said that and it reminded me, I created a new activity just this last year for one of my clients. And I called it the kindness toolkit, because you said, what's in your back pocket? And I thought, like, I got a tool belt. But I didn't put in tools. I put in glue and, a flashlight and Post-it notes and googly eyes. And one of the things I'm doing is having fun with my audiences, saying, what does this represent to you? And the first time I did it, I had and a clock. I have a clock, like an old fashioned clock. I was expecting things that they would say, and they said completely different things. So it was kind of exciting that. And of course, every time I've shared that activity, it's going to be different. It has been so far, and it's going to continue to be different. So,
how does kindness show up in conflict? I imagine there are ways, like, we don't have to dance around conflict, and I think that's not even being kind. It's direct. I think directness is kind.
Yes.
How does it show up for you, and how do you coach people on, like, when you need to have that a real conversation that might be uncomfortable? Kindness can play a part in that. I'm curious what you think about that.
Absolutely. I think communication that is direct is kind. It's not always easy, but I think when you are speaking with someone who you have, and actually this is another, like I said, communication has become this really important conversation that I'm having with clients. And it's about body language. It's about your word choice. It's about your tone of voice. It's about being really present with people, not sort of having conversations as you pass them, but making time to really sit with them. And I think that when these conversations also come with heart, the person you're dealing with will feel that. I mean, we're energetic beings, so people will feel that if they know that you are not BSing them and you are sitting with them. And this is hard for you too. I heard about somebody who had to fire, and I'm sure this wasn't the first time somebody had to fire somebody, and they just knew it was going to be such a hard day for them, because like firing somebody is never fun. But it was one of my clients, and we're dealing with creating a culture of kindness, and this person was not living into that value. And so it was inevitable.
When it comes to values, are you encouraging some of these organizations to somehow like instill kindness or the behaviors of kindness into their core philosophy, so that way they can then teach people how to actually behave?
Yes, and we're trying to gamify it. We're trying to do it. I mean, look, kindness is not a rocket science. Right. We all know what kindness is. And a lot of us learned, or we did a kindness thing when we were kids, or we did it when we were teenagers. So here we're adults, we're working in a workplace. We know what kindness is intuitively. So are there ways? So my senior living created a kindness bingo, because bingo is really popular in senior living communities, but we created for the staff with little squares, which has the action we would like, the behavior we would like. And, there's going to be a reward when you fill your bingo card. And it's one way to kind of put out front kind of the behaviors we want. And certainly we're talking about ways we can create a culture by reiterating and amplifying the behaviors that we think support that, and really getting your team members on board with it. So many of the clients, I will start with a leadership keynote. I might be doing something at the high level of the organization, and then it's like, can we go a little lower? Can we go to the middle managers? Can we go to the frontline staff? And my message is going to be, it's going to be the same for every level of the organization, because they're all human beings, but there might be different ways we address it, as we're talking about. What can I expect from my leadership? Oh, is my leadership going to acknowledge me and notice me? And if I have suggestions for the company, are they maybe going to listen to what I say? Because that makes me feel like I'm part of a team, right? And then the managers, it's like, this is what we're going to tell your employees. So if this is not how you behave, it might be something we want to start thinking about,
What challenges do you run across when it comes to like organizations like saying they want to implement kindness strategies, but maybe it's not sticking? Like what are some of those things that come up that make it hard to get it to stick?
I think you sometimes have porcupine people, and you could have people who are, because of their job title, they are not necessarily the kindest people. Maybe they they're sort of quick and react in a certain way. And that can be a little bit hard, Because how can we have this culture where this is the way we want to try to do things? And I've had some of my managers in my senior living tell me about that. You know, there are certain people they're struggling with. And so we sort of brainstorm. What can we do? Can we kill them with kindness? Can we love on them? Can we tell them that this is the culture we're building? And I think, again, it goes back to those direct conversations that this is where we're moving. And maybe we haven't been doing this as well in the last decade, but this is what we're doing moving forward. And you kind of either got to get on board with it or it's not going to be a good fit anymore. And I think I hear a lot about this when I speak in the credit union industry, because I told you they have this really amazing culture of kindness. A lot of, at least the clients that I've worked with, many of them. So I'm already feeling like they already have that. And when we do our conversations, they can come up with suggestions so easily. And they still need a little reminder about how can we amplify it? Yeah. You use the word amplify. And that's my theme of the year, amplify kindness.
Oh, I love
that.
I've
been trying to do that in my own ways with my clients, especially this year. So
I love that. What are some strategies or tactics that are like super easy to implement inside of an organization that you're encouraging those employers to instill in their culture?
Let's see. So, acknowledgement, making sure your recognition program or just in general, you are recognizing on a consistent basis is really robust. If that's not something you're doing, then it's something you need to do because your employees will notice if they're not feeling like their work is recognized, like they're not part of a team. Definitely talking about professional development and ways I can mentor my employees, especially knowing what they want. And a lot of, in senior living, there may be people who have come in at a frontline level, but their goal or their dream is to advance. So how can we help them put their dreams out there so that we can support and nurture that? And creating some of the ways that we are doing that. I'm trying to think of, as you asked me that question, I'm trying to think of my bullet points of the things we work on. Making sure you've taken something off of somebody's plate. As we've come through COVID, maybe roles have shifted and, the job title may not be exactly what it is. So having a direct conversation about how we can do that from your leadership, I think can be really helpful. And also just checking in with people. Yeah. I don't know. Okay. So if we talked in probably 21 or 22 during the pandemic, because most of my work was virtual and I was doing so much more on Zoom, I wanted to find ways to connect with people. And so one of the things I asked mid-pandemic it was probably 1,000 people over 14 different audiences. What's one way we can be kind to you? And I expected mid-pandemic it was going to be more time and more money. Would you have thought that? Would you have thought that might have been the answer?
I'm trying to go back to, I don't know. I feel like people are so isolated at that time and maybe they just wanted connection, opportunities for connection.
Okay. Well, so yeah. So money and time off were bottom of my most required answers. The most popular was ask me how I'm doing.
Yeah.
Smile at me.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, it is good. It's a connection thing. It's like you actually care about me as a whole person.
It was totally a connection thing. So, but I think even though we're, kind of out of COVID, I still think we need that. We're always going to need that. That's human beings. We're connected to belonging people. So I like to talk about that in terms of, making sure that as a manager, you are just checking in with your people. If you don't really want to have a huge surprise come down the road because you had no idea what was going on for this person outside of the workplace, right? But if you kind of know what's going on, you're asking them, what's going on and how can I support you? They're going to come to you when they really need that. And I think that's really the authenticity of being a leader and not feeling like you have to be in us and them. It's sort of like we're all in this together. Our end goal is to, So, and I think certainly the pandemic in my senior living worlds, it kind of, it changed the dynamic because I think they got to know each other way different. And they were all in person while many of us were working remotely. They were all in person through the hardest times of this global pandemic and illness and isolation and their residents. And so, I give them so much. I have so much respect for the leaders and the workers in senior living that weathered the pandemic. So
one of the other questions that I always like to ask too, especially like a one-on-one scenario, is like, what do you need? Like, 'cause sometimes it's a resource thing, or if there's any support that you can offer, it's just to know like, hey, I'm here. I've got an olive branch out for you. Like if there's any resource or tool that you need, or you just need to just bounce some ideas off me, I'm here for you. And that's also a connection point. So I love the question you posed. I always like to ask the one I just mentioned as well. I think it's helpful.
I add to that one thing I've learned, and you probably know this too, people struggle to receive kindness. It is not something that comes naturally.
I deflect it.
I know, you're not alone. I mean, this is very common, and maybe particularly a little bit gender-based, maybe, but not necessarily. It's really like we've all grown up thinking, well, I'm pioneer, I can do, whatever. I don't know. Yeah. So I encourage people. So I do have a couple of, a tool. One of the tools I give is to receive the next time you get a compliment, and hopefully you get some of those periodically, to just receive it. Yeah. Like practice that as a little way to receive a kindness that's really easy to receive, hopefully, because, and be genuine. Don't say, oh, this old thing or whatever. Yeah. Don't deflect it like you just said. So I'm giving that to you, Brandon.
I will take it.
I want you to think about the next time you deflect a kindness, kind of go a little deeper and say, why is that happening for me? Why am I not able to accept this kindness from somebody else? Because I'll tell you on the flip side of that, when I talk to my audiences or any client and I ask people want to be givers. So this is why I know that our world is really being set up to be told we're divided, because I think a lot of people actually are there for each other. Yeah. And if you think about it in smaller situations in the workplace or in a school or in a situation, I think a lot of times people are there for each other during those hard times.
I 1000% agree with you. I think there's a lot of external factors that say otherwise, but I think when you are truly in a one-on-one, a group setting, an organization, I think people are actually more connected and together than we're led to believe.
Totally.
One of the things that I think a lot about, and this is not my idea, I'll credit Sean Bussey, owner of a brand agency out of Kinesis, wrote a book called Marketing from the Inside Out. And one of the ideas that I love from this is that if we can figure out our culture, and kindness plays a huge part of this, if we can treat our people with kindness, respect, that's going to show up to your clients, your customers, maybe the community. I just love that idea. Maybe respond to that and just what you might think about that.
Oh, yes. I mean, the best way you can get your employees to show up as their best selves is by treating them well. They become the spokespeople of your organization. They become the faces of your organization. I did a call for frontline receptionists as part of one of my senior living groups. And we were on the call and I said, tell us a time that you received a kindness or share something about your leadership. And this woman had worked at other senior living organizations. She said, I have never been treated so well as here. And this is not going to be my forever job. And her manager was kind of in the background on the Zoom call. And she said, when she's off for a day, all the residents say, where's Jane? They all want her. And so not only did she get affirmed right there in front of all of us, it tells me that she puts on a amazing smiley face and the residents react to that. And the same is true if you run, any kind of a front facing business, is you want your people to go above and beyond, and I also encourage people. I mean, we're all also customers of businesses. Instead of complaining when we get bad service, share when you get good service.
Yes.
Call the manager over. Tell somebody you got good service, because you want that ripple to happen as well. You want to give the server or the whoever it is or the person who's done something for you in a store help. We want them to their manager to know. And sometimes I'll get a little bit. I'll be like, does the employee get anything? We just had a fence done, and I wrote to the owner of the company, small local company that was amazing. The guys were so fantastic. And he said, if you give them a 5-star review, they get a bonus.
That's awesome.
So of course I'm going to give them a 5-star. They were fantastic, so.
Yeah. I think the reviews are great, especially when you can call out somebody's name too.
Totally.
They'll get the credit. If anything I've learned about having kids too, is giving them praise and kindness. They want to keep doing it, whatever you just praised. So it reinforces that and we're all better for it. So I love that idea of just, giving people reviews, giving people shout outs. Out of nowhere, unsolicited. Those are really good acts of kindness.
They're really great acts of kindness. And I think that's also where we begin to focus on what's going well what's going well
Yeah.
and what's positive, and why am I only focusing on the bad? And actually, as a speaker, sometimes you'll get one person in a review or a survey to tell you something bad, and like, you shouldn't focus on that one thing. If there's something you can learn from that feedback, great.
Yeah.
But if you can't learn from that, or it's just somebody, spewing, let it go. Let it go. Because, obviously the other 150 or 5,000 people that you impacted, that's who you should be talking to.
Yeah.
So
I 100% agree. Well, as we kind of close this conversation out, which I just love your message, Linda, you're speaking my language here. You do some really good work. How do organizations engage you? We talked about keynotes. I know you got some programs coming up. Maybe talk a little bit about that before we end the conversation.
I do. I have a keynote, of course, a kindness keynote. I also do Beyond the Keynote, which is a kindness essential package, which is the videos that I mentioned to you that can be disseminated. I have bite-sized kindnesses, which is another way to sort of share kindness throughout the year. I've come up with a package of 12 that you can have. I also have a kindness intensive, which is really like a 6-module deep dive for anybody in your organization. We could start with leaders. We could do it as an all staff. But I customize everything for my clients, depending on what they need. We have a conversation first about what are their pain points and what could they use help with. I am launching this October though. So just a few weeks from now, and I still have a spot or two in this cohort, my emerging leadership series. So it's going to be on Zoom. It's going to be 6 weeks. And we're going to be talking about building confidence for your emerging leaders, and communication and recognition and self-care as they become leaders in your organization. So that you can hop over to my website, lindacohenconsulting.com, or email me, and I'd be happy to get you more information. And it's all over my LinkedIn. I've been posting about it since I brought it up. So
we'll put links to your website, your LinkedIn, Instagram. I think people can connect with you in all those places, right?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Yep.
My guest today has been Linda Cohen. She's the Kindness Catalyst. Linda, thank you for being part of the podcast.
Thank you.